I'm online, you're online, let's chat. Welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you've already seen my previous videos. So as I've spoken in some previous videos, I truly adore one thing about Paris, and that is the ability to go vintage or secondhand shopping relatively easily. Secondhand shopping or vintage shopping is incredibly popular here in Paris, especially with the younger generations, and thrifting has really become a great way to find some incredibly rare pieces for a relatively good price. Haven't lived here for a while now and haven't had my own experience shopping secondhand and vintage here in Paris. I thought, what a better way than to give you guys an itinerary to follow in case you're living here and just want some extra addresses, or if you're coming here to visit for a couple of days and you just want to be able to maximize your options and choices with a strict itinerary for a day. I'm gonna give you guys, first of all, a couple of vintage and secondhand stores that I believe are great to visit when you're here in Paris, as well as later on in the video, a small itinerary showing you how I usually walk when I have family or friends over in order to let them see as many stores as possible. Spoiler alert, you start in the Sentier and you finish by République. If you like my content, do not hesitate and click that subscribe button below. I will try to upload videos weekly, and don't hesitate to put in some more recommendations in the comments. I've already gotten a couple, so my list has gotten a little longer. Thank you very much for that. Before we get into it, let me just point out one difference between secondhand and vintage. Secondhand clothing encompasses all of the items of clothing that are getting a second life or a second owner. Meaning, if you, for example, get a piece of clothing from your older sibling, that is already a secondhand item because it's been passed down to you. Secondhand items do not have to be a certain age or from a certain era to be considered secondhand. If I buy something tomorrow and donate it and someone takes it, that is already secondhand. It's 2 days old maybe, but it's secondhand. Vintage needs to come from some specific eras to be considered vintage. Now, the rule of thumb is approximately the 1950s for the oldest, and then going into the 2000s, almost the 2000s, but still the 90s max. So that is vintage. I'm gonna start with some outliers outside of this route because these are just some stores that you need to just find that I don't really have associated with my itinerary but are still very good. So one of the first stores that I would recommend is Les Selles Voleurs. Les Selles Voleurs is in the 12th arrondissement and has a pretty cool concept. First of all, it looks like a bank that has just been broken into, so you walk through the blown up door, which is quite cool, and it looks really cool from the inside as well. But they have a system where every week the entire store gets renewed, so every week you have new pieces. Every day from then onwards until the next Sunday, €1 goes off from the price. So by the time that you come on a Saturday, some pieces are 50 cents, and it is irrespective of what the piece is. Meaning you can find a pair of pants, a leather jacket, a blouse, everything in the store has that same fixed price. I have bought something there from the past. It was a pretty cool top from, it has a German name, Baum und Vergarten. But when I got home, I realized the colors weren't exactly what I wanted, but I managed to resell it on Vinted afterwards. The only downside is it's quite small, meaning if it's busy, you're going to run into people. There's also no changing area, meaning you just check it out and you just need to buy it, and you can't return it, obviously. Right next to that area, there's two shops that are owned by the same company, and I'm pretty sure it's secondhand as well. It's called Tucked and Untucked Friperie. In France, the word friperie comes up a lot because that is the name for a secondhand store, basically. You have Tucked, which is just different pieces, and it has a bit of a 70s vibe. Sometimes you can find a vintage piece if you're lucky. And then you have Untucked, which is designer pieces. And these two stores are walking distance from each other, and both have a really cool vibe. So I would definitely recommend those two as well. Okay, now we get into the itinerary a bit. So what I would recommend you do is you check out Le Marais. Le Marais is the area where I think you will find the most vintage and secondhand shops in one condensed area. And the prices are relatively good, and you just have a lot of choice, a lot of options, and it is also a very nice neighborhood to walk through. You will find vintage shops all over the city, and depending on what you're looking for in your budget, you can go to one or the other. But if you're, for example, here for a day or two, or you just want to do one express route, this is the one we're gonna go for, Le Marais. Some of these stores are franchises, meaning you will find multiple of this store around Paris, especially. I will mention one, Guérissol. And depending on the arrondissement where you go, you will have different styles and different pieces, knowing that in that arrondissement, certain fashion choices are more accepted than others, or certain trends are more present. So those are things to keep in mind as well. But if you like any of the ones that I've mentioned, do not hesitate to just on Google Maps look if other franchises exist across the city. Okay, so let's get into it. So the first one is Friperie X Vintage Dealer. The reason I really like this one is because, as the name suggests, you have both vintage and secondhand pieces. It is a relatively calm store. It is not in the epicenter of Le Marais at all, so it's really relaxed and it's a great place to start, I would say. A pretty famous one here in France is À la Tonne. À la Tonne has multiple different stores across Paris. There's one close to Les Halles, but this one that I'm talking about is on Rue de Turbigo, which is close to Etienne Marcel, which there's also a metro stop called Etienne Marcel, which is why I'm mentioning it. And it is mostly secondhand. You will find mostly, I would say, more masculine styles. You see the large leather jackets, and if you find brands, it's usually Nike, Puma. I like the skinny Y2K sunglasses as well. You will find the Juicy Couture oversized bags, baggy jeans, unisex pieces. So it is definitely more within that style. Not necessarily mine, but I've seen some really cool things hang there that I am sure look really cool on other people. Price range wise, you're looking at a minimum of 20 euros or something for the cheapest pieces. But then depending on the rarity of the piece, if it's vintage or secondhand, those prices may vary. Next up is another big franchise, very big, but so worth it, is called Fripestar. Fripestar, you have many in Paris. On that matter, there is one street here in Paris called Rue de la Verrerie, where you have 3 on the same street. But somehow every single Fripestar has a different vibe. For example, I walked into a Fripestar and seen nothing, bought nothing. And then there's another where I found the most beautiful bodysuit, which is like the black velvety sleeves and a little bit of a high neck. Another great thing about the Fripestar is the prices. The prices are usually between 5 to 50 euros if you're looking at big winter coats, for example. And it is usually busy, but like I said, Fripestar is really one of those cases where you want to go to the different stores because each franchisee has a bit of a different style and will hang certain things or not. Another great one, especially if you're on a budget, is Guérissol. Like I mentioned previously, it's a franchise as well, and you'll have them spread across Paris. Depending on the arrondissement, the contents might be a little different, but one thing is universal is the fantastic prices. You have pieces starting from 5 euros. I bought this beautiful red leather jacket in this store, which if you've seen my content, if you've seen me on Instagram, check out my Instagram while you're at it. That red jacket follows me everywhere since I bought it, and it's real leather. It's so original, it's so cool, and I bought it for 15 euros. It was such a good purchase. I worn it to death since coming here, and I would absolutely recommend. One in particular that I would recommend is on Boulevard Sébastopol. There is one there. That's where I bought my leather jacket and is the one I would recommend. Another street that is really cool and almost parallel to the Boulevard Sébastopol, where the Guérissol is that I just recommended, is Rue Saint-Martin. And there are two secondhand stores on that street, which I 1000% recommend. First one is the Vintage Tisséco Solidaire. Now the word vintage is in the name, but it is not a vintage store, it is secondhand. And you have pieces that are stickered, and depending on the sticker, you have a fixed price for it. So it goes from 5 to 30 euros, I believe. And then you have some pieces which are not stickered because they're special and the prices are a little higher. But I have bought from that place the most amazing pieces. I'm gonna show you some. The first piece that I got is this fabulous purple blouse with a satin bow on it. It has a bit of a retro style to it. It doesn't have a tag in it, so I don't actually know from what year it is. I do love it. It is gorgeous. I've never owned anything like this before, and I'm so happy I bought it. Now, the reason I keep on coming back to this store is this. These boots I bought in this store, Tisséco Solitaire, one of the two, the one closer to the Centre Pompidou. And I saw them they were already a little bit, as you can see, like they've been like used a little bit, but usually I'm not a big secondhand shoe shopper because it gives me a bit of the ick, but clearly these had not been really worn. I think that somehow in transportation something happened, or somebody bought them once, wore them to a party and never wore them again, but the soles were basically intact. And I saw them and I thought they were really cool, and I check the bottom of the shoe for the sizing. They were my size, which is amazing. And after that I saw that these were Essentiel Antwerp. Now, if you don't know Essentiel Antwerp, it is a Antwerp-based brand which is relatively high priced. And these boots retailed in 2022 for 350 euros. And I bought these at that store for 40 euros. And I was so happy with them because, yeah, I've worn them a lot here in Paris. Even though they're stilettos, I would pick my days when I would take the bike or I wouldn't have to walk that much, and I wore these and I'm so happy with them. So as you can see, I am a big fan of those two stores. So if you go there, have a look around. I think that they've recently split up the store in one of them is more luxury oriented or premium brands, and the other one is just everything put together. Have patience when going into these stores because there is a lot to go through, but if you just take your time, these are some of the beautiful pieces you can find there. Also, the owner basically always gives you like a textile tote bag with you when you buy something, which is always really nice. Next up is Système Solaire. Now, Système Solaire, as far as I know, there are two in Paris and they're both in the Marais. Système Solaire is for when you're more into the upper echelon pieces and prices, seeing as you're looking mainly at vintage designer in these cases. So you can find yourself some Yves Saint Laurent, some Pierre Cardin, some really cool pieces from Dolce & Gabbana, and some Chanel as well, for higher prices than the €5 Guérissol for sure, but still amazing prices, and the condition these pieces are selected in are fantastic. What I like about these stores is that it's incredibly curated. You know, they don't just randomly take in whatever they get, they really pick the pieces that they're gonna hang out and sell. They really pick the pieces that are going to hang out and sell. So these are some of the highlights that I would say are absolutely worth your visit when you come to Paris. Now, how would that look when you go on a walk and follow my itinerary? What I would recommend is you take the metro until the metro stop Sentier, and from Sentier basically walk down and do the couple of stores that I mentioned in the beginning, and then walk your way past Les Halles and walk from Boulevard Sébastopol into the Centre Pompidou area, then continue down to Le Marais, and basically continue straight until you arrive at Place des Vosges when you've walked through the entire area basically. Post-edit me here, I realized that I've spoken mostly about secondhand stores, so let me just add 2 vintage ones. So if you were going to the Moulin Rouge or that area, there's a store called Le Coffre, which sells vintage pieces that is not that far from there. And if you then walk further down from that store, you get to Avant Paris, which also sells more vintage items, and that's on Rue Drouot. I hope that you guys liked this video. I really enjoyed making it because I love sharing these addresses while I'm here in Paris. But be careful, don't empty the store out. I still want my own pieces as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.